What's up? Today we are looking at writing in the style of Polyphia. Now, I've got a new camera set up. I hope you can see this guitar well. I have just had to turn on so many things to make this work, so, we'll see how we go. I decided to start doing these videos because I want to help people understand how they can take other people's music and make it their own, and not because I want people to copy people. In writing music, many people have got very famous because they were the first person to put two old or two existing ideas and make them something new. So that's why I like learning what other people do and learning how to take what other people do and their kind of default things and learning how they work. And so once you know how they work, then you can either use that for something that you want, or you can take elements of that and incorporate that into your writing. So effectively in this video, I'm just going to show you what I believe Polyphia do and how to do that to make something that sounds like this. Alright, so to get started, I listened to Goose and Goat and every other song that Polyphia have starting with G and took apart what are their main characteristics, what are normal things that they use, and how I can use them to make something in their style. I watched a video of Tim Henson explaining how he writes, and he said that he basically gets on the computer, he writes something in there, and once it sounds the way he likes, he then learns it on guitar, and then, hey presto, you've got yourself a Polyphia song. Right, it's not that simple, and I'm going to give you a few more techniques to use to get that same sound. So if I wanted to way oversimplify everything, first thing I would do is I would say, get a very basic chord progression, and you embellish every single idea in there, and embellish it some more, and once you're done embellishing for days, you end up with a Polyphia song. Okay, that doesn't really help you out, but I will take you step by step on how I made it using that as the main source. So, first things first, you get a simple chord progression. I've chosen to do A minor, C major, D major, E major. And that is every single thing. Very first thing I did, instead of just playing those straight, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, that's really boring. I Polyphiated it up just a little bit, and I put the chords on the first beat of the first bar, the four and of the first bar, first beat of the third bar, and the four and of the third bar. In context, that sounds like this. Alright, it is really simple, but this actually starts building the foundation of where we go next. So, of course, I was writing it in the program, so I kind of just did this, and I got that to the sound that I kind of liked. And the first thing I did is, instead of just playing straight chords, you embellish it. Right? Right, these were just things that I kind of plugged into the thing. Okay, that sounds cool, that sounds like something that I'd play on guitar. And then you add in a slide to make it more guitar-like, and then you end on the next chord. Now, I chose pretty quickly to actually just play the bass notes as single notes so that I would be forced to outline the chords with the embellishments that I'm making, but right, and that's all based off the idea of right, but that's really boring, so you add in the harmonized note. Right, if you don't know what that note should be, then you can just play around. So that doesn't really work. Sounds wrong. So right, I come to the D, and I was like, oh, well, I want to do something that is a bit Polyphia. Now, and by a bit Polyphia, I mean a bit insane, but right, and in that part, all it is, so there's one really fundamentally important part of Polyphia that's here, and aside from that, it's incredibly basic. So what the important part of Polyphia here is that Polyphia love using dubstep style rhythms. They'll take a passage that's very, 1, 2, 3, da 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 da, da 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 da, da, whatever. They'll just kind of throw different random rhythms in there. So that was something that I wanted to start drawing out, is these different rhythms that you're not really expecting, but something that we've grown accustomed to with the dubstep type of style. So, and then this one was kind of a lucky accident. So it was at this point. Right, at this point, I just kind of hit the C there, so it's the 15th fret on the A string. I hit that note. I was actually intending to hit the 14th fret, but that made it a C augmented triad, right, instead of the C major, which I was going for. But the C augmented, I feel, actually works better. It kind of allows me to lead into this, lead back into the riff. It gives it a bit more tension, is all. So as soon as I kind of figured that out, I was like, well, I'll just climb up that, because that keeps the tension there. It's not too flashy, but it kind of just sounds like Polyphia to me. It has that kind of jazzy tension that they like to put in there to guide you through the song. Right, now, how I came up with that, it's just, how do I get from here to here? Fortunately, we've got a cadence there. So it's where it wants to pull, but it's how do I do this while making it sound pretty, while making it sound finalized. Right, and we're kind of stepping out of the scale. We're following the G sharp in the E major there, and we're getting ourselves a bit of a Middle Eastern vibe. For that end of the passage. Right, now, it's kind of just a case of rinse and repeat here. Right, this is another case of embellishment. Right, so I had the A minor chord, and I just needed to do something interesting to get it back to this C. Right, so I just actually chose a bunch of random kind of intervals. Stuff that I wouldn't normally do, stuff that kind of, you're doing big leaps that don't necessarily make sense, but in this case it worked really well. This has taken that first chord, is exactly what I played in the last one, and then, but I just wanted something to make it sound a bit more triumphant, a bit different, which is once again going on the idea of theme and variation that I've said at the start Polyphia loves so much. In this next part where I go to the D, there's a couple of things that I've done there that are, honestly, it was just playing around with it. It's not something that was intentional, but to analyze it, and the reason why it works is because I'm taking it from the expected and what we heard last time, the D major, and I'm making it a D minor. Right? At first I had, which is kind of boring, and I was like, I do need to make this more Polyphia, so what do? I shove in some of those dubstep rhythms that I mentioned before. Right, but once again, kind of lame, why am I bouncing on the same note? So I'm basically going in a chromatic run, why not just go down fret by fret by fret? And then you land on the note that pushes you into the next chord. Quite honestly, with this next part, this is probably the only part that I didn't write on, or that I did write on the guitar, because at first I had, right, to finish the passage. But that is literally just copying the last thing, and Polyphia really like to do some ridiculous thing right at the end. In doing that ridiculous thing, it makes it more interesting, but it also makes it Polyphia. So I had that, and I was nearly happy and nearly going to put that up, but I decided that I needed to shove something else in there. It's just outlining that E augmented chord that I spoke about before. But you just play it really fast. I just basically took everything, put it in different rhythms. That meant I needed more notes, which it was kind of used in Goat. It's not necessarily a Polyphia technique, it's just a kind of odd grouping. So with this run, right, it is 1 and a, 2 and a, 1 and a, 2 and a, and then you slide to the highest note to finish the run off. So is kind of awkward, you're expecting the accents to be on different places. It is all just running up that E augmented chord until we get to that F sharp. And then once I had done all that, it was a case of putting in drums and bass and the other guitars around that main guitar. I feel like for me personally, the biggest limitation that I have with making a song like this is I am not proficient on drums. I'm not a proficient writer for drums, nor am I bass. So when it came to actually writing those parts, they didn't quite come out the way that I wanted them to. And in fact, I didn't know how I wanted them to come out. This is the way that I bastardized the drums and the bass to make it sound the way that it does. And to recap, the most important things that I see in the way Polyphia write are you get a very simple chord progression, you embellish it a lot, yet you take a theme and variation, you use those dubstep rhythms wherever you want, you must put in lots of complicated guitar lines, and something that of course I haven't mentioned at all is the tone. So you want a mostly clean guitar with a bunch of compression and a bit of grit, some dubstep sounds, and you've got yourself a Polyphia song. And so once you've done all of that, you just speed it up to a place where it's just a little bit too ridiculously fast. So I hope this has helped you understand a bit about how I believe Polyphia write music. Now, what I do recommend is you take these lessons and you take the ideas that I've outlaid to you for this and write a couple of Polyphia style things, because it's not bad to be able to write some stuff like other artists. There's definitely sections in my music where I'm like, I absolutely love the way that Tony Iommi writes riffs, so I'm going to write a Tony Iommi inspired riff. And one of my best riffs is a Tony Iommi inspired riff. You know, it's really a good idea to take your inspirations and make them something that's unique, something that's new. But don't get caught in only composing in this way, because if you do, you're just going to sound like Polyphia, and everyone's going to just think that you're the guy that just wants to sound like Polyphia. That's fine, but you're not going to create your own voice musically to do that. I recommend learning more music and studying more music and finding how you can blend 5 different voices into one song so no one can get a reference, but it all feels familiar and it all feels unique. And with all that, I hope you got a lot out of this lesson. This is all total speculation. I watched one video with Tim Henson. I've got experience myself, so I got that idea and I applied it to what I already know, and then I made something that I think sounds worthy of, existing somewhere in the Polyphia back catalogue. Do this. Take these techniques and write your own Polyphia style songs. Because when you have that skill, when you go, okay, I want a Polyphia sound in my song, you can take 10 different things that you've learned out of this exercise and apply them. And then all of a sudden you've got something that's unique, but hey, it definitely hails back to your influence of Polyphia. So for now, have fun with it, play with it. I hope it was informative. And if you've got any other bands that you'd like me to do this with, please let me know below. Please like it if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't like it, but that one's for you if that's the case. And subscribe if you haven't already, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, guys. And girl, if you're here. Bye!